Hey there, this is Renessa Boley Lane, and welcome to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, then you know that my entire life's mission is to equip you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love, whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. I am fired up because today is going to be a good day and it's a good conversation, and we're going to talk about a whole lot of good stuff. And so today we're going to talk about redefining power and how you use power really to create work that you love. And I am over the moon with this beautiful woman that's sitting and sharing the screen with me, Gloria Feldt. I'm so excited to have her in this conversation. Where do I even begin? Let me tell you why this conversation is so important. I think that when we talk about the idea of power, as women, sometimes we have all kinds of misguided definitions or odd conditionings around what that means. Sometimes we have negative connotations about what that means. And sometimes we think power is something that's outside or that's done to us, not something that we're able to invoke to really get more of what we want in our career, our business, and even in our personal life design. And so Gloria is just going to shatter so many of those misconceptions. This is just a conversation that you just got to sit with and turn off the distractions and just kind of come with us on this journey, because I think she's really going to bless you in this conversation. That being said, let me tell you a little bit about Gloria. I was trying to figure out what I was going to say in terms of her bio, because it is so extensive, and she's just a bad woman, and like bad meaning good. But she's just somebody that you get to learn from. So I'm going to pick little pieces of it. But Gloria is an acclaimed expert on women in power and leadership. And she's been on the front lines of leadership for decades, like decades. She's a best-selling author. She's an in-demand keynote speaker. She co-founded an organization called Take the Lead, and their mission is really her life's passion, which is to prepare, develop, inspire, and propel women to take their fair and equal share of leadership positions all across all sectors of society and so forth. I mean, she's just done a lot. So she wrote a book called No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power. She is the former CEO of the world's largest reproductive health and advocacy organization, Planned Parenthood. Like, everybody's heard of that. And this woman has been at the helm, or had been at the helm of that organization, capping a 30-year career in advocating for women. Like, I could go on and on and on about her accolades. I can go on and on. Y'all could read that. Here's why you need to learn from Gloria. Like, when you have an opportunity to sit at the feet of someone who has just a life well lived. Life well lived doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean that it's not been without challenge, doesn't mean that it's not been without mistakes. But she opens up the kimono on her success, on the things she's overcome. She's vulnerable, she's real, she's open, she's warm. And that's a safe place for you to get mentored. And so this conversation really is a great mentorship opportunity from someone who walks her talk and is such a force for good for women. And so it's my honor to promote her, to feature her. And I can't speak highly enough about her and what I believe that you're going to take away from some of the things that she shares. So with that, I want to just welcome you, Gloria, and I just want to thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you, Renessa. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about power. Why is this conversation so important?
Well, I had to do my own research, actually. I got completely obsessed with trying to figure out why we had made so many advances.
Mm-hmm.
We had opened doors, we had changed laws, we had seen a woman first almost everything.
Yep.
And this is like about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been an advocate for women, as you said. You know, my bio is long and it has a lot of things in it because I've been around a long time.
You've been around a while.
So I was actually shocked when I found out that women were stuck at under 20% of the top leadership positions across every sector. Didn't matter what it was, whether it was government, whether it was corporate, whether it just whatever. And I was truly shocked about that after all the work that had been being done for so long, for so many years, by so many. And I had to, I looked at the research, and a lot of the research said, well, women just have less ambition than men. And I'm like, no, that cannot be true. That cannot be true. I know that's not true. What's the problem? And so what I finally surmised on my own is that, women and men are socialized differently around power. And women, from the moment we're born, we're told, we're talked to in words that have to do with our physical appearance. And that we're sweet and nice and quiet, right? Boys, from the moment they're born, what do people say about them? Oh, he's so handsome, he's so strong, la 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 la. And so I even though things have gotten a lot better, and now girls are told, well, you can be anything you want to be, you can do anything you want to do. The fact is that there's still a lot of objectification that goes along with that, and the narrative of history. And I think with what's going on in the world today, this is more obvious than ever. With the racial injustice that has become wide open for everybody to see. The narrative of history has been written in terms of fighting and wars and finite pies of power and resources. And we have to fight over them. And if I take a slice, there's less for you. Well, the truth is just the opposite. The truth is, if I help you and you help me, we both have more.
Interesting.
The truth is that in the economy today, which is based on brains, not brawn, there's no end to innovation that can be done. There's no end to creativity. There's no end to human capacity to make life better for each other, for ourselves. But we haven't translated that in our minds. And so women, I think, understandably reject that old narrative of power as being the power over you, because haven't we borne the brunt of some really bad aspects of that? But you can't be a good leader. You can't do anything in life if you're unwilling to use power in some way. So what I did was I help women. I learned how to help women transform in our own minds how we are thinking about power, from that old oppressive power over to a generative, creative, everybody can have this kind of power. Power to make life better for ourselves, our families, the world, the community, the power to innovate, create. We can all do that. We can all be that. And there just isn't a finite pie, as I said. And so once I started noticing that once I would work with women to just make that simple shift in their own minds from power over to power to do all the good stuff they want to do in the world, they'd say, oh, well, I want that. I want that kind of power. I want to be able to make money. I want to be able to feed my family. I want to be able to do this for my community. Because power has no attributes of its own. It's like a hammer. You can build something with it, or you can break something apart. And so that sort of frees us then to have higher levels of intention. And so it's not about ambition, because women would always say, oh, I want, I wish, I hope to do this. But to have intention, you have to say, I will, I am, I'm doing it now. I see myself already in that position. So that's the transformation that we do.
Awesome. It's interesting because this conversation is around creating your perfect work. And, sometimes people can recoil at the word perfect, like, oh, there's nothing perfect, this or that. When I'm talking about perfect work, I'm not talking about it's all hunky-dory, it's not without risk, it's not without challenge, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about you're doing the work, career or business or mission, that you know that I'm going to do. This is where I'm supposed to contribute. And that can evolve over time. And so I'm curious for you, because you have a long storied career in advocating for women in reproductive rights and all that. You are Planned Parenthood for so long. You share in your book, though, that when that chapter closed,
Mm-hmm.
that was a difficult transition for you. And I want to share a little bit about that, because there's a lot of women that are listening in, like they're at a place where they're looking to redesign their success. And what next looks like is so difficult for them to even envision. Tell us a little bit about the challenges for you in kind of opening the next chapter for yourself. And then we're going to unpack that as we go, as we talk about power and intention and so on.
Sure. I had a really difficult comeuppance at one point, where I had to deal with what I call my own power demons.
Okay.
Those little demons, they were there. I didn't realize they were there. I had so given myself to this movement
Mm-hmm.
that I had sort of lost who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things that if I can help women, always keep yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
And do the thing that you are passionate about, but always keep in touch with who you are.
Interesting.
And I think that there are techniques and there are ways that you can do that. I just gave it all.
Yeah.
And so at first I felt like a bowl of Jello.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I didn't have that structure anymore.
Yeah.
Who was I?
Mm-hmm.
Would people return my phone calls?
Right.
That's the first thing that happens is, man, your Rolodex starts changing fast.
Yeah.
When you don't hold a particular position anymore. And so while I was trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do, the one thing I did know was that I wanted to write books and articles, because I have literally, since I was 5 years old, I saw myself as being a writer. That was probably, if I hadn't let life intervene in all kinds of different ways, I would have just pursued a career as a writer.
Interesting. Okay.
But I didn't do that. So, which is fine. I had a great, wonderful career. I cannot complain. I have always been very fortunate to be able to make my life's passions into my life's work. Okay. So I seriously don't complain about that at all. But I had given too much of myself. Mm-hmm. I hadn't kept enough of myself. I hadn't kept relationships for myself. Mm-hmm. I hadn't kept, it was all for the movement and the organization. Mm-hmm. So as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I was writing and I was doing articles and I wrote a couple of books. And so I had an agent who persuaded me that she knew I was friends with the actress Kathleen Turner. And she said, nobody's ever done her bio. Why don't you write her biography? Mm-hmm. And so Kathleen and I, well, to be honest with you, we had a few margaritas at our favorite Mexican restaurant in New York.
That'll do it.
And by the time we were done, we had decided, well, maybe this is kind of a good idea. We think we can do that. And the relationship with Kathleen was fantastic. I mean, she and I never even had a contract with each other. Mm-hmm. We just said, okay, we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. And, we knew from the start that I would be doing all the work. I'd be doing the writing, but it was, it was about her. So so again, what I found was I repeated that pattern. Mm-hmm. I did not hold enough for myself. And although my contract said that we were 50-50,
yeah,
the truth was, for the publishers, mm-hmm. she was the celebrity. Mm-hmm. I was the writer.
Yeah.
And when we went for our publicity meeting before the release of the book, I had delivered my part. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, they just turned their back to me and looked only at her.
Wow.
And it was in that moment that I realized, finally, Gloria, you've done it again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you may love this cause or how much you may love this other person. Mm-hmm. You are not speaking in your own voice. Mm. You need to speak in your own voice. That is what you need to do with the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. So that was it was really tough. I was down in the depression for a while after that, but it was a very necessary, pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you shared that story. And when I first read it in the book, I was like, oh, like I felt you. It's kind of like when someone says that the book is better than the movie. Well, like when you read it in the book, you're like, oh, I know. But it was in that moment, I was like, she's the real deal. Because, and the reason why I'm glad that you shared that story is that there's some folks who are listening in, and they're at different stages in their career. They're not 30 years in. They were not the CEO of this major, organization that everybody knows the name of, whether they like it or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not there. But to be able to see that no matter where you are on the spectrum of achievement and success and all of that kind of thing, these are real conversations you have to have with yourself. Everyone's got to deal with their power demons as they look to evolve into whatever the next phase of their contribution looks like. So if she can share that story, then hopefully that gives you some validation wherever you happen to be, that it's okay that what you're grappling with as well. But at the core of it, we all have to be willing to find and identify our own voice, and then be able to leverage it to then do something about it. Like, that's where the whole idea of power comes from. So I appreciate you sharing that. So why do you believe for women there's well, let's get beyond that. In what ways do we need to redefine power for ourselves to even be able to figure out what to do with this thing? Like, you've had so many conversations with women. You've seen resistance. You've seen some people resist. You've seen some people embrace. Like, what's the redefine that needs to happen moving forward?
In my experience, and this may not be everybody's experience, but in my experience, once we can change in our own minds our thinking about power from that oppressive idea of, I want power because I want to have power over you. I want to have power over Renessa to make her do something or not do something. Once you can shift that to realize that power is energy, power is capability, power is influence. A lot of women I find will say, oh, well, I don't have power, but I kind of have influence. But I think influence is a little bit different. And I think it's really important to own your power. So one of the exercises that we do after we've redefined power from power over to power to is I quickly try to get women into an exercise called your points of power, where you simply sit down and take a piece of paper and you start listing your power that you bring. What are the powers that you have that you bring to your work or to your life in whatever sphere you're thinking about? Usually women are thinking about their careers. But what is it that you bring to the table that's really special to you? What is it? Do you have knowledge? Do you have contacts? Do you have talents? Do you have skills? What is it that will enable you to demonstrate that you have value and you have strong value? And then you need to say that to yourself over and over and over again, and really realize that deep inside that you have those powers. And I know a lot of times women will say, well, I just have really bad imposter syndrome. I don't feel like I'm, even though I know I've studied, I know I have these degrees, I know I have, I've had this experience, but I still don't feel like I'm worthy. Well, I want everybody to know everybody feels that way sometimes. Yeah. Everybody feels that way. Everybody, excuse me, everybody has their reasons why. And a little bit of imposter syndrome is not bad. Yeah. It keeps you humble.
It keeps you humble. I was going to say,
it keeps you humble. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But it also can keep you from being willing to take a risk, from being willing to actually try something new. So it's looking into ourselves and seeing, are we making excuses for ourselves rather than pushing ourselves to try something, stretch a little bit, and don't worry about it. You know what? So what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
If you try something and it doesn't work, right? What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
You learn something.
So here's the question. What's the tipping point between acknowledging what my skills might be, my talents, my value? Because there's some people that can acknowledge that, and they can list off, here are my strengths, here's, whether I took the Strengths Finder or something else, like they can articulate and enumerate their qualities. just because the quality is there doesn't mean that it's been activated, which
Right.
in my mind is where the power comes from. Because if this is dormant and either nobody knows about it or you're not visible or whatever, then there's no power in all of this potential that you have, right? So what has to happen, or where's that connection or that spark? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, that then ignites in all of this amazing potential that you have in a career, in a business, in a movement, in or whatever, actually gets ignited into some power that affects some kind of outcome. If that question
Right.
makes sense.
Right. No, it's absolutely it. It's the question of what your power to what.
Yeah.
Your power to what.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Let me just. Because I've got to get my voice back for this because this is a lot to talk about. So it's the power to what is really that's the real question that we all have to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's where we come to the idea of intention.
Okay.
And getting deeply in touch with what our intention is.
Okay.
Now, the way I look at intention is, as I said, it's the difference between ambition and intention is that intention is I am doing it. I am going to do it. It's not just a dream. It's I really commit myself to do it. But then you have to have some other things to go with that.
Okay.
I believe that there are 3 key elements
Mm-hmm.
to having an intention that you can actually turn into reality.
Okay.
And that is, first of all, you have to have a clear vision
Okay.
of what your intention is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes getting that clarity of what your vision is the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and taking some time to figure that out is super important because you're going to need to see yourself having already achieved that. You're going to need to be able to see that you have achieved that vision. And then you have to have the courage to step out and start working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to take the action that's necessary. And sometimes that action is really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So your question about how do you turn it into action is exactly spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Because without the action part, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you don't take that action. And I'll tell you, a story that from my own life that has become a metaphor for me about intention and the 3 powers of intention is I am terrified of suspension bridges. And I was on a hike that I had really wanted to go on because I'd heard it was absolutely gorgeous in New Zealand, the Milford Track. It is absolutely gorgeous. I would do it again in a nanosecond. But what I didn't know when I started on the hike was that I would have to cross 22 suspension bridges from one side to the other.
Wow.
And it's one of those hikes that you're guided, and once you get started,
there's no turning back.
You can't turn around. You have to keep going. So and these suspension bridges were not nice, well-constructed metal bridges. They were rickety, mostly wooden bridges with little wires on the side that you could barely see. And I just know that I freeze up. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I just know I'm going to fall into the raging river or the jagged rocks, and I'm going to die, and that's going to be the end of me. And so I'm on this hike, and we come to this first bridge, and my husband runs across, and he turns around. Oh, only one person at a time. It was that rickety. Only one person at a time could be on that bridge. So my husband runs across, and he has no problem with any of this. He turns around, he starts laughing at me, which just kind of added to my humiliation. But it also made me angry enough that I realized that what I had to do, and that I had to keep my eye focused on the other side of that bridge, what my intention was, where I wanted to end up. And then I had to start putting one foot in front of the other, the other, front of the other, front of the other. I had to screw up my courage to do that. Not look down, not look to the side. Just keep my eye on that intention and take the action until I got there. And I never lost my fear of suspension bridges. I'm still terrified of them. But by the time I had gone across 22 suspension bridges,
I was going to say, you had 22 opportunities.
I knew I could do it. So I had gained the courage to know that I could go across those suspension bridges. So even if I was still afraid, I could do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That was really important. So sometimes sometimes, by the way, sometimes you have to take the action before you actually get the courage. And that's what happened for me on that bridge.
Wow.
I didn't really have the courage before. I just had to take the action. And then once I had taken the action, it helped me grow my courage muscles.
There's so much in that like I want to unpack, because there are a few different aha moments, tweetable moments, that kind of thing. But I think the first piece, I'll probably go in reverse order, but I love that you said that you had to take the action before you have the courage. And I think for a lot of us, there's this idea, well, if I'm afraid, then perhaps that's a stop sign to what I'm supposed to do. Because if I'm supposed to do it, then I wouldn't be this scared to do it. Or you're waiting for somehow the fear to subside before you step in. Mm-hmm. And knowing that a lot of times, and it's totally true, that you have to do it scared. The fear, sometimes it dissipates, sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes it doesn't. But what you developed was this knowing that, but I know I can do that. Right. I know I can deliver. And I should share this with folks every now and again, because I speak a lot, but at the beginning of every talk, I am like, is this the time? Is this the one I'm going to Earl on? Like, is it where I'm going to lose my cookies? Like, there's this sense of, even though I know that I love, like in the midst of it, I love it. Like, I'm so energized, but in those moments leading up to it, there's just such terror about getting in front of people. And I have been speaking since I was 11 years old.
Is that right? Really? Oh my goodness. Wow.
So some fears don't, like, it's a lot easier than it was at 11. But the point is that it's beautiful that you said that, because I thought, oh, well, after 22 suspension bridges, she is good to go. And for you to be able to say, no, I never lost the fear of that.
Yeah.
I think that's a learning for some folks that that sometimes, but you do build up a level of courage that says, man, I know that I can do this. And if your intention is aligned to perfect work and it's aligned to purpose, then the why for why you're doing whatever you're doing trumps whatever discomfort you might experience in the process. Like being able to get in front of women and inspire them and encourage them and to get them to a place where they're doing what they're supposed to do, all of that trumps the fact that I feel like I'm going to throw up before I come and stand in front of the crowd. Because on the other end of that is going to be somebody doing something amazing, right? And so I really, really appreciate that point. But what I took from you, and I'll let you expound upon it, I like the distinction between ambition and intention. Because I think a lot of us hang our hat on our ambitions. And we think the more that we talk about something, then somehow that's supposed to become real. But for you, is intention at the decision point? Like when does that shift happen from ambition to intention?
Ooh, what
when can you tell when somebody's not one or the other?
That is a great question. The way I conceptualize it is that it feels to me like ambition is the fuel that you need. So you need that fuel. You need that wish, I hope, I want, I dream. So it's kind of like the fuel, and at some point you have to put the fuel in that vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's the point where you put the fuel in the vehicle and you put your foot on the accelerator and you start going towards your intention. And I think that's the critical point is that takeoff point. It's that feeling you have when you're in a plane and all of a sudden you get liftoff. It's that same kind of feeling. It's like, I don't know that I can put my finger on it exactly or explain it exactly, because I think you just have to feel that moment in your own body, literally in your body.
Yeah. What I also liked about the story and appreciated because for you, the intention was getting to the other side of the bridge. And you were like, I'm not looking up, I'm not looking down, certainly not looking down, right? And I think for a lot of us, whenever we're at that place of redesigning our success, whenever we're at that place of now creating what's next in our perfect work, there's this chasm between where we are and where we want to be, and we're not really sure how to get there. Mm-hmm. And making the decision that I am so committed to this end game, doesn't matter how I get there. It doesn't matter if I go left or right or pivot, or I had plan A and now I'm on plan X, or whatever. But if the intention is that I'm going to hit this end game, mm-hmm. then there's a commitment that is unswayed by everything else that's going around. Now, your situation was a little bit different because once you take a step out, it's a wrap. You go make it. But I think for some of us, there's the opportunity to have that kind of bulldog faith mm-hmm. and commitment about whatever it is that we long to do and whatever impact that we long to make. And I think for some of us, we can be a little soft on ourselves around honoring that intention, or even making the transition from wish, hope, and all of that to I'm committed to this visual.
Well, and that's where I think having your cadre around you, whatever you want to call it,
yep.
your circle, your sister courage, your kitchen cabinet, your accountability partner, whatever you want to call it. Because the thing is that once you have declared to someone else mm-hmm. what your intention is, then you have made a public commitment, mm-hmm. even if it's just to one other person. Yep. You've made a more concrete kind of commitment mm-hmm. to getting there. And that's something that can be really helpful to people mm-hmm. is to have their own, choose. There may be one person. It may be that you have an informal, like I said, kitchen cabinet that you confer with every once in a while, whatever it might be, trusted mm-hmm. relative, whoever. Mm-hmm. But, and in our programs, one of the things that we have developed at Take the Lead is our favorite programs to do mm-hmm. are the ones where we have women together long enough that they form a cohort. Mm-hmm. And then they start organically helping each other get to their intentions. Mm-hmm. And I actually started noticing that kind of informally mm-hmm. when we have one of our programs is called 50 Women Can Change the World mm-hmm. and we do it by different sectors. So the first time we did it, it's just like, it was this magic thing that I saw happen. Mm-hmm. It was like, after a few months of meeting together, mm-hmm. the women they learned a lot. Don't get me wrong. I loved our training. They learned a lot in it. But what I saw that was the secret sauce was each other mm-hmm. and that they had committed publicly to each other what their next step was going to be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They declared their intentions. We have every woman do what we call our strategic leadership action plan. Mm-hmm. And then they have to share it with each other. Mm-hmm. And they just would organically start supporting each other. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing, because we would keep their Facebook groups live mm-hmm. After the whole program was over, and I would notice that they would they would hire each other, they would tell each other about jobs, somebody was doing an event, they'd put a call out and say, I need some volunteers, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. They were helping each other just organically. So I realized the power of the cohort and the power, whether it's one other person or whether it's 50 as we have in these programs, it's the power of having someone else that you've committed yourself to, mm-hmm. that you're going, that they know what your intention is mm-hmm. and they help you and they support you and they pick you up when you fall down, because you'll fall down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Give us some examples. Because if someone is listening and they're not accustomed to operating from a place of power, it doesn't, and that has nothing to do with how accomplished they might be in their careers or their business or anything like that, but they may not be accustomed to operating from a place of power. Mm-hmm. Give us a visual for how does that look? Like when you see a woman and you're like, man, that's a powerful woman. I would imagine for you, it's not just the position she's in. She's the CEO of X or she's the executive director of Y. But when you think about a powerful woman, what do you see?
So first of all, I see someone who knows herself, knows herself well. So the first power we have to have is the power of knowing who we are.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with knowing. Actually, the first question I always ask people when we start a program is, how did you get your first name?
Interesting.
And I ask that question because, as Toni Morrison says, when you know your name, you better hang on to it.
Mm.
I love that. I get goosebumps every time I hear it.
That's profound.
And I think what she's speaking to is know who you are. If you know who you are, then nothing else can sway you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin to realize that whatever outside forces are telling you you're bad or you're not this or you're not that, you can listen to them because maybe they have some useful feedback for you.
Mm-hmm.
But you know it's about them, not about you.
Yeah.
And
then you know what you can discard, right?
That's right. Yeah, you got to get to a place where you realize that's their problem. That's their problem. I'm fine, whatever, So there's that piece of it. The other piece of it, if when it comes to leadership, is people follow people who have a point of view.
Mm.
People follow people who know what their values are and are willing to share them. And they let you know where they stand. They may not agree with you on everything,
right,
which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say they will follow somebody who has a clear point of view,
mm-hmm.
even if they disagree with that person, faster than they will follow somebody who's wishy-washy and doesn't take a stand, and you can't trust them because you don't know what they really believe.
Yeah.
Because it's all about trust, really, ultimately. It's all about trust. So that's the second thing. And, not everybody has to strive to be the CEO. Not everybody has to decide they're going to open a new company that's going to be the biggest in the world. But you need to know what matters to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're doing that, if you're on that path, you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And, stuff will happen on the way. Sometimes it's just starting to do things. And when you start to take any kind of action, other things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Other good things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I got my first CEO job totally unqualified, but I had written a paper about this little Planned Parenthood affiliate in West Texas, and I interviewed the woman who was then the executive director.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was planning to be a high school social studies teacher.
Interesting.
And I still love to teach.
Mm-hmm.
But she called me up a couple of weeks later and she said, I'm leaving. I think you should submit a resume. And I thought to myself, well, I've never had a real job interview before, so it will be good experience. I'm in no danger of being hired. And, the rest, as they say, was history. I did it. I was scared to death. The first month I was like breaking out in hives, literally, because I knew I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like the suspension bridge. If you just start walking, putting one foot in front of the other and doing something else good will happen.
Yeah.
So, people will come to your aid. And if you ask for help, you'll probably get it. And, you begin to think about who are the people around me who can help me with this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think one of the hardest things for women often is asking for help, because we often feel like we have to know it all. We have to be able to do it all, but nobody can.
Yep.
Nobody can.
Yep.
And so knowing what you don't know and asking for help to fill in that gap is it's part of knowing yourself, but it's also part of being confident enough in yourself.
Yeah.
That you can acknowledge, well, I don't know X, so I need to ask so-and-so who's an expert in X to help me know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess those are some things that just come to me off the top of my head.
I love that.
It really always has more to do with your character and your values and how well you know yourself than how many degrees you have or how much experience you have or anything else. It's always going to be more about the character and the intentions that you have.
And I think the word that comes to mind as you're talking really is authenticity, and having the courage to be true to your truth. Like, I think a lot of us know what's true for us. We know what we want. We know what we don't want. Now we get confused on what we think we should want or what other people, I want this, but I should want that, and, this or
Right.
that or the other. But I think once you get clear around who you are, um, just as a woman, what you believe you're good at, what you're not good at. There's some things I'm not good at, and I don't want to be good at that. I think I
Right.
should be good at it, but I really don't want to be good at it. I don't want to spend all my time trying to fix something that is broken, and I don't, But when you say what matters most, I think that's really powerful. And I'm reminded of a story. There's a colleague of mine that I knew in college, and I interviewed her for my book, Fast Lane, Wrong Direction. And I interviewed her for that book because she had gone to a prominent university, and, having come from that university, there was this expectation she was going to go and be a medical doctor. That's what she went to school for.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, so I started that whole process, and I, taking the tests, the MCATs, all that kind of stuff. And she says, but I started interviewing these doctors. And she's like, I realized as I interviewed them, that's not the life that I wanted to have. And this is no ding on doctors by any means, or physicians or anything. But she's like, that's not the life that I wanted to have, And she ended up becoming a stay-at-home parent. And she's a stay-at-home parent to 3 kids and her husband has a business, and she's a part of that business, but she really is. And she homeschools all 3 of her kids. And when you look at her life on the outside and you look at the pedigree and where she'd come from and where she'd graduated and all the promise and potential that people had subscribed to that, you would think she settled for something. That's what someone would judge, right? She is the most vibrant person that you will ever meet. Like, she is so incredibly vibrant. Her kids are probably brilliant. Like, she's really good at that. And I've watched her over, 2 decades, and you just see how much influence and power she has in her space. She's got a community of people that she mobilizes in lots of different ways. She's really interesting. But it's in part because she followed what mattered most to her, which gave her the capacity then to have this impact and this power in all kinds of countless ways. And so when COVID happened and all these things were, now everybody's quarantined and their kids are at home because school's closed and this and that, lo and behold, you see, on social media, her starting this initiative around helping other people to be able to school their kids at home. And so now there's this whole market around that, because now all these, professionals and this and that are like, what the hell am I supposed to do with these kids? So, but she has mastered that space, right? And in her world, you look at her, and there's no less power in what she's doing than in someone who was CEO of X. Like, the level of impact and influence and excellence with which she does it is just awesome. But I use that story because there are some women listening, and they're thinking about what their next is, or the desire of their next. And that desire may look so radically different than what you think you have groomed yourself for, or so radically different than what you think is acceptable. And all that Gloria is talking about in terms of power and intention and all of that, harnessing those things, you can then begin to create work that you love, and you can begin to create it in such that you're getting highly paid to do that, right? Because you can get paid for anything. You can monetize anything in a big way. But I share that because when you talk about what matters most, I think far too often we are not honest and authentic about what really matters to us. And so sometimes at the root, our decisions are sometimes already misaligned at the core.
Right. Well, and also what you described is also reflective of the fact that you have to start doing something. The only way you learn, if that's not the thing you want to do, is if you start trying to do it.
Yes.
And then you realize it's not a good fit for you.
Yeah.
It's when you sit and don't try anything that it's really a problem. It's the good news about life is that we can unchoose almost anything we choose.
I love that.
We can unchoose if we think we wanted to do something and it didn't make us happy, or we weren't successful at it by our terms or whatever. You can unchoose that and go do something else.
That is,
and that nobody tells you that.
Yes.
Nobody tells you that when you're growing up.
Yes, that will set you free. That will
Yeah,
set you free. No, I love
yeah.
that. So as we start to wrap up, because intention is so important to you, and it's a cornerstone of a lot of what you teach. How can we become more intentional in our career, in our business, in our mission? How can we as women become more intentional in those pursuits?
Well, I'm happy to share with you a few of the exercises that I share with women when I do the training,
Mhm.
the Take the Lead 9 Leadership Power Tools training, whether it's our short workshops or our more immersive 50 Women Can Change the World programs. They're some of these same basics we do pretty much all the time. And most of these are pretty simple. I already mentioned the points of power exercise, where
Yep.
you just simply take a piece of paper and write down
Mhm.
3 to 5 things that you know
Mhm.
you bring to the
Mhm.
table.
Yep.
So that's one. Another one is to do something similar, but with regard to your networks,
Mhm.
and sort of like, put a circle in the middle of the page that reflects the person who can have the most influence on whether you get to your next career level
Mhm.
or your perfect work.
Yep.
Um, who has the most impact on that
Yep.
besides yourself?
Mhm.
And then how far or close are you to that person?
Mhm.
And then plot where other people are
Mhm.
who you have relationships with or who you should have relationships with.
Mhm.
Help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a transactional, cynical kind of way. I believe the world turns on human connections
Yeah.
and relationships, and that you really need to be nurturing and building relationships at all levels.
Mhm.
The person who may have the most impact on you may not be your boss.
It's the truth. Yeah.
It might be your coworker. It
Mhm.
might be somebody who you went to school with years ago who is a friend of your boss. It
Yeah.
might be, you don't know it,
Mhm.
but you need to think intentionally
Yeah.
about who those people are and what is the network that you need to build to
Mhm.
help you get to your next step, or
Mhm.
where you want to go with your perfect work. So those are two things. One other thing that I will share is this. I call it the intentions journal.
Mhm.
And I know that sounds like, you need to like really be having a fancy journal. Well, I just use
There you
the,
go.
I use the notes function in my iPhone
Yep.
because I'm lazy
Mhm.
and I never can get myself to like actually journal like they say
Yeah.
you should do. So I just use the notes function. And what I do sometimes I don't do this every day, but at least a few times a week, before I get out of bed in the morning, I open it up. I write down, what is this day going to mean
Mhm. Wow. Okay.
emotionally, and what are the things that I want to accomplish today? What are my intentions for the day? Not a lot of them. It's not a to-do list. It has to be, what are those really important things that are going to, the important instead of the urgent,
Mhm.
is what I would say. The stuff that's really important that will actually help you on down the road,
Mhm.
or that will satisfy you in your work that you're
Mhm.
doing. That
Mhm.
what is what's really important for you to do.
Mhm.
And then that night or the next morning, before you do anything else, you open it up again and you look at it and you see, did I accomplish those things? Did I do those?
Mhm.
If you didn't, don't beat yourself up.
Mhm.
Think about, okay, what stopped me? What held me back?
Mhm.
What would help me go forward?
Mhm.
Since this is really important. And once you've done that intentions journal over a period of months, first of all, it becomes habit.
Mhm.
And so you focus more on your intention.
Mhm.
But it also, when you look back, you get really good feedback to yourself,
Mhm.
because you'll see you've done a lot of it.
Yeah.
You'll see that you've actually accomplished a whole lot. I
Mhm.
mean, I can, on a day-to-day basis, I can get really, I can just get really kind of down about, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I haven't gotten this done. I haven't raised this money. I haven't gotten this contract. I haven't done whatever it might be. And then when I look at it over the last year or the last 7 years, I see, good Lord, we've gone from being an idea to being an organization with
Yeah.
people who work for us, and a
Yeah.
whole bunch of fabulous leadership ambassadors out there who can deliver training and do coaching. And we've served these thousands of people.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's feedback that helps feed you
Yeah.
emotionally and helps you really keep going on your path.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
This
those are
is
just a couple of tips.
This has been an awesome conversation. And I think it's one of those conversations that feeds the soul a little bit, and it helps us to tap into who we want to be and what matters most, so that all of the activity that we are taking is intentional, and it is focused and driven to an end that's going to matter at the end of the day. And so I thank you, Gloria, for being a part of that conversation. And in the spirit of generosity, Gloria has extended a free gift to everybody that's listening. And I'm going to turn it over so that you can talk about it a little bit, and then I'll wrap us up and close us out. So, floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, it's been an awesome conversation because you're an awesome interviewer, Renessa. You had, I mean, this has been wonderful. I so enjoyed it. And so one thing that I have done is I've really done a lot of study about sort of the dynamics of power and the power of language in particular. And so I've created a booklet that I'll make available to everyone called The Power of Language and the Language of Power. And it comes from a place of looking at how you can communicate more effectively across gender and culture.
Good.
And you know, sometimes people think about that and they think, oh, she's going to tell me how I need to change myself. But that's not the case. What you want to do is be your best self. You want to be able to be your best self, and being your best self means you can actually communicate effectively with anybody, anywhere. It's like if you were going to France, you would learn a few words of French.
Yeah.
Right? You know, for a lot of reasons, as respect, as be able to find the bathroom,
Yep.
you know, lots of reasons. And it's the same thing with people. We all grow up in our own cultures, in our own different families with different traditions and different lives. And men and women literally speak somewhat different languages. And so learning how to speak across those languages, those gender and cultural differences will make you one of the most powerful people in your organization or in your work, whatever it might be. It's so what I've done is I've looked at the impact of implicit bias, what it does to our heads, and how to use the power of language to go over, under, around, and through.
There we go.
State your intention and help other people understand you the way you want to be understood.
This is brilliant.
And so I hope it will be helpful to people, and I'll make sure that you know how to receive that.
Yep. So below this video, you're going to see a link where you can get access to the language of power, and take advantage of that. Like anything that Gloria puts out there for you to have, especially if it's free, be all over it. Put your name, your email, your last 4 digits of your social security, whatever you need to be able to get it. And if you're a leader, or if you aspire to lead people, this is a really, really powerful tool on how you can connect with folks. If you are in business and you have, folks who are either freelancing for you or supporting you in some way, your clients or customers, this is valuable information to have. And so I highly encourage you to take advantage of that and really soak it up. And if you have not invested in her book, No Excuses, get the book. Gloria's life is fascinating. And, from her beginnings, like she's got humble beginnings, and like the whole intricacies of her life is just really interesting. And I think it will inspire you as to what's possible for you. And we didn't even but scratch the surface of some of that in this conversation, but I highly recommend her book, No Excuses, as well. So with all that said, I will, on behalf of Gloria and myself, we want to wish you every success and happiness, and joy and power and fulfillment and all. Just go out in there and do something awesome. So with that, we're going to say bye-bye, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.